We're used to seeing the ocean filled with light, coral reefs, vivid color, but today we're going to see something else entirely. We're going much deeper. Today we'll enter the twilight zone, where life turns transparent, and in the absence of sunlight, animals ignite their own light. We'll descend into the midnight zone, where the forms of life change radically, where nature has engineered its most extreme survival mechanisms. And we'll reach the abyss, where life has broken free of the sun entirely and flourishes where we once thought it was impossible. The oceans are a completely different world, but it's the same planet Earth. We begin. This is Mars. This planet sits hundreds of millions of miles from us, and yet, despite that distance, humanity has mapped 100% of its surface with extraordinary precision, down to a few meters. We know every canyon, every mountain. We know the dried riverbeds where water may have flowed billions of years ago. And this is the James Webb Space Telescope, one of the great achievements of modern science. With this telescope, stationed in deep space, we've observed a galaxy whose light took 13.5 billion years to reach us. We saw that galaxy as it existed just 300 million years after the Big Bang. So, why am I telling you this? Because if you look at a map of our own planet, more than 75% of the ocean floor is nothing more than a blurry, pixelated smear captured only by satellite. There's an international project called Seabed 2030, whose goal is to map the ocean floor completely. As of now, only 25% has been mapped in detail. And there's a catch. Those numbers refer only to terrain. Knowing a mountain exists is not the same as knowing what lives on it. But the deeper point is scale, a scale we almost never perceive. The oceans cover more than 70% of the planet's surface, but when we look at a map, we see a flat plane. The ocean is a volume, about 2.5 miles of depth, filled with life from surface to seafloor, a colossal three-dimensional world. If we assessed Earth not by surface area, but by the volume of space where life actually exists, we, the land dwellers, occupy a negligible sliver of the biosphere. To grasp this scale, imagine gravity on land suddenly disappeared. Life is no longer pressed against the ground, but fills the entire sky all the way to the edge of space. That's exactly how the ocean works. We're used to imagining this world bathed in light and green. In reality, more than 90% of the space on our planet where life exists is not paradise. It's cold, dark, and crushing. Which raises a logical question. Do we actually know our own home? If we ask, where has a human physically been? Where has a robot descended? Where have we taken sediment samples and seen life with our own eyes? The number becomes genuinely disturbing. Less than 5%. 95% of the ocean floor has never been touched by a human hand or a robotic arm. Right now, down there, entire ecosystems exist, enormous mountain ranges, life forms we have never encountered. We live in an apartment where we know what the balcony looks like, but have no idea what's happening in the living room. Why is that? Because the deep ocean has three enemies waiting for any explorer. Enemy 1, pressure. The ocean is a monstrous compression machine. Every 33 feet of depth adds 1 atmosphere of pressure. At a depth of 1 mile, that's already 100 atmospheres. At the Challenger Deep, the deepest point on Earth, pressure exceeds 1,100 times atmospheric pressure. To put that in terms you can feel, the weight of water pressing on every square inch of your body would be the equivalent of standing beneath 50 fully loaded Boeing 747s, or 2 Eiffel Towers stacked on top of each other. And that weight doesn't push from above, it pushes in from every direction simultaneously. To reach these depths, we need inhabited spheres made of titanium or specialized steel with an internal diameter of barely 6 feet. The pilot kneels in front of the instrument panel just to fit. Every dive is extraordinarily expensive and dangerous. Enemy 2, radio silence. Radio waves, the foundation of all modern communication, attenuate rapidly in water. At depths of 3 to 6 miles, there is no GPS, no cellular signal, no Wi-Fi. You cannot simply radio the pilot the way you would an astronaut aboard the International Space Station. This is why communicating with researchers at great depth is nearly impossible. Enemy 3. Darkness. Sunlight penetrates to roughly 660 feet. Below that, from about 660 to 3,300 feet, is the twilight zone. Light exists, but it's too faint for photosynthesis, and visibility is limited. Deeper still, and you enter a region of total and permanent darkness, the midnight zone. This is an enormous black void that, taken alone, is larger than all other habitats on Earth combined. Below it spread the abyssal plains, vast underwater wastelands covering half the ocean floor. All of this immense, boundless space teems with life, but that life operates by entirely alien rules. Right here on Earth, there's a parallel universe. A world where time moves differently, where evolution went down paths we can barely imagine, where invisible creatures dissolve completely into the water, where predators light their own fires in eternal darkness to lure prey into a trap, where intelligence is distributed across an entire body rather than housed in a brain, where organisms don't rely on the sun at all, they feed on the energy of Earth's own core. We spend billions searching for extraterrestrial civilizations in distant space, but they're here, swimming beneath us, holding the secrets of life's origins, secrets we're only just beginning to unravel. Welcome to the ocean. Let's descend into the abyss together and discover what it hides. The epipelagic zone, or simply, the zone of light. This is the only layer of the ocean pierced by sunlight. Here, through photosynthesis, the foundation of the entire food chain is built. At first glance, this world seems familiar, but the sheer openness of this space creates its own ruthless conditions. There's almost nowhere to hide. Blue emptiness in every direction for miles. So, evolution here went a particular way. To survive in plain sight, its inhabitants had to develop not just speed, but exceptional intelligence. We'll begin with the creatures we tend to think of as closest to us in mind. Bottlenose dolphins. We tend to think of dolphins through the lens of aquariums, perpetually smiling friends of humanity. But that smile is simply the anatomy of the jaw. In the wild, their behavior is far more complex than it appears. Dolphins possess extraordinarily developed brains. Their brain-to-body ratio isn't far behind our own, and they use that resource to its fullest. Their primary survival tool is invisible to us: echolocation. Dolphins literally see the world through their ears. In the front of the head sits a fat-filled structure called the melon, which focuses sound clicks. The clicks bounce off objects, return, and the dolphin's brain instantly processes the signal, building a detailed acoustic picture. They can detect the shape, size, and density of prey in absolute darkness or murky water. Dolphins have self-awareness. They recognize themselves in mirrors. They understand, that's me. They have communication culture. Every dolphin at birth receives a unique signature whistle, the equivalent of a human name. When a dolphin hears that specific whistle, it knows it's being called and responds even after years of separation. That high intelligence has also produced a complex social structure. Their capacity for empathy is striking. Breathing in dolphins is a conscious act. An unconscious dolphin stops breathing and drowns. So if a pod mate is injured or too weak, the others don't abandon it. They swim beneath and literally push it to the surface, keeping it afloat for hours so it can breathe. This behavior is rare in the animal world. But dolphins also have a dark side. In the wild, they can display behavior that is disturbingly, almost recognizably human in its cruelty. They form gangs to eliminate rivals. There are documented cases of dolphins attacking harbor porpoises, not for food, but to clear territory, beating them to death. Harbor porpoises are distant dolphin relatives, related the way cats and lynxes are. Sailors named them porpoises because of the short, sharp, puffing exhales they make at the surface, sounds that reminded sailors of snorting pigs. Dolphins are also known to seek altered states. Young dolphins have been observed catching pufferfish, carefully squeezing them without killing them, prompting the fish to release a microdose of neurotoxin. For the fish, it's stress. For the dolphin, it produces a mild narcotic effect. Dolphins are not toys. They are powerful, highly organized predators with their own sensory system, their own language, and complex, sometimes brutal social rules. Orcas. If dolphins are the ocean's street gangs, orcas are elite special forces. Important note, orcas are not whales. They are the largest species of dolphin, and they are the absolute apex predators of the ocean. Everything fears them, including great white sharks. Why? Because orcas have something fish don't. They have education. That may sound strange, but it's a scientific fact. Orcas possess what biologists call culture, a set of traditions and skills transmitted not through genes, but by learning and imitation from older individuals to younger ones. Every pod has its own distinct set of clicks and whistles for communication. Different pods speak different dialects, languages the neighbors don't understand. Their social structure is matriarchal. Grandmothers are in charge, elder females who accumulate knowledge to the generations below them. They teach the young the most complex hunting techniques. Some family groups specialize in herding herring into tight bait balls. Others hunt whales and seals. They've learned to generate waves that wash prey off ice floes in perfect synchrony. Think about the level of coordination required. They don't use words, but they act as a single mechanism. Orcas are the only species on Earth that has frightened great white sharks badly enough to simply abandon their hunting grounds when they detect the scent of a pod. Orcas attack sharks and surgically extract only the liver, with precision, and leave the rest, simply because they can. Yet, despite being apex predators, there has never been a single documented intentional killing of a human being by an orca in the wild. The reason? Orcas are extreme dietary conservatives. They eat only what their mothers taught them: fish, seals, sharks. Humans aren't on the menu. And their echolocation allows them to scan prey completely, assessing shape, size, and density. They see right through us and understand that a human is just a bag of bones. To them, we're like aliens, interesting to look at, but not worth eating. Blue whales. Even orcas look small beside the true titans, whales. The blue whale is the largest animal that has ever lived on Earth. It is larger than any dinosaur that ever walked the land. Its tongue alone weighs as much as an elephant. Its heart weighs nearly 400 pounds. Its aorta, the main artery from the heart, is wide enough to fit a basketball through it. But the most extraordinary thing about blue whales isn't their size. It's their voice. Sound travels 4 times faster in water than in air, and whales have evolved to exploit this completely. They can communicate with each other across thousands of miles. One whale sings off the coast of Ireland, another hears it somewhere in the mid-Atlantic. They have their own hits. In a given year, all the whales in an ocean sing the same melody, and then the following year, the trend shifts and they learn a new song. Why? We don't know. Perhaps it's simply art for its own sake. But even their size didn't protect them from us. These giants were nearly wiped from the earth because of our lamps. In earlier centuries, whales weren't seen as wonders of nature. They were floating fuel tanks. Whale oil lit the streets of London and New York, lubricated the machinery of industry. Populations were pushed to the edge of extinction. And do you know what saved them? Not conservationists, oil companies. It was the discovery of petroleum refining and the arrival of cheap kerosene that made the dangerous business of whale hunting pointless. Black gold literally gave life back to the largest creatures on the planet. Other inhabitants of the sunlit zone. In the open ocean, there's nowhere to hide, and evolution has run some fascinating experiments. Take flying fish. When hunted by large predators below, their only option is to catapult themselves into the air, using their tails for an extra burst, then glide over the waves for hundreds of feet. But they're not safe in the air either. Frigate birds hunt them on the wing. Flying fish exist literally between 2 dangers. Rise too high, and a bird takes you. Drop too low, and a fish does. Then there are cat sharks, which to our eyes look like ordinary brown fish blending into the seafloor. But to another shark looking up, they're a neon sign. They're biofluorescent. They absorb blue light and re-emit green, a signal almost certainly used for communication between individuals of the same species. And then there is the humphead wrasse, Napoleon fish, which you've almost certainly seen in viral videos, the bold human-faced fish that relentlessly approaches divers, gets in the way, and demands attention, a comical-looking creature with a massive forehead lump. But their life cycle is far more remarkable than their appearance. Every large, formidable male with that enormous hump was once a female. The life trajectory: a fish is born female, grows, swims through life, but once it reaches a certain size, the body triggers a complete biological overhaul. The fish retreats to a shelter and emerges months later as a male. The hump on the head swells, a signal of status, the personality shifts towards aggression, and the one-time female takes control of the territory it once inhabited as a subordinate. Why such complexity? It comes down to competition. Being a small male in this species is pointless, zero chance at reproduction. You'll simply be crushed by rivals. So nature engineered a perfect strategy. While you're mid-size, be female. Only when you're powerful enough to physically dominate competitors does the transformation into a male switch on. Cephalopods, the real aliens among us. All the creatures above have something in common with us, a backbone. Now let's meet those who genuinely look like they're from another planet. The giant Pacific octopus holds the largest brain of any invertebrate on Earth, and it holds a remarkable secret. 2/3 of its neurons aren't in its brain at all. They're distributed directly through its arms. Each limb can think independently. A severed arm will continue attempting to catch food and deliver it to a mouth that no longer exists. The octopus has no skeleton, no shell, no fixed body shape whatsoever. A 100-pound octopus can squeeze through an opening the size of a coin because the only rigid structure in its body is its beak, roughly 2 inches across. If the beak fits, the entire animal follows. Fishermen who leave traps know this problem well. An octopus flows through the netting like water, calmly consumes every crab inside, and flows back out again. The fisherman hauls up a sealed, undamaged trap and finds it empty. Camouflage is its own art form. The octopus has 3 layers of skin it controls like a set of filters: color, texture, reflectivity. It doesn't merely hide, it impersonates rock, coral, and sand with precision. Its relative, the cuttlefish, is another genius, but its weapon is camouflage and deception. Hunting a crab, it sends pulsing waves of color rippling across its body using millions of pigment cells. The crab falls into a kind of stupor from this light show and becomes lunch. Cuttlefish have also passed the marshmallow test, the classic delayed gratification experiment used with children. Eat 1 treat now, or wait and receive 2. Cuttlefish can wait. They plan and assess risk. The irony is that many adult humans fail this self-control test, and a mollusk passes it. Sea turtles. Among all this activity, some creatures mastered stillness millions of years ago. Sea turtles watched the dinosaurs and outlived them. Their superpower is a built-in GPS. A sea turtle can swim thousands of miles through open ocean with no landmarks of any kind and return to the exact same beach where it was born 30 years earlier to lay its eggs. They sense Earth's magnetic field. To them, the ocean isn't featureless. It's mapped by invisible magnetic lines they navigate with precision. The sperm whale, bridge to the deep. But one creature connects this sunlit world to the darkness we spoke of at the beginning. The sperm whale, the largest toothed predator on the planet. It breathes air, as we do. It nurses its young on milk. It sleeps suspended vertically in the water, hanging like columns of a sunken temple. But it hunts down below. The sperm whale inhales and descends to depths of over 6,000 feet into a place where there is no light whatsoever. Why? To battle another giant of those depths, the giant squid. These encounters happen in absolute darkness, and we can only infer their ferocity from the sucker-shaped scars carved into the hides of returning sperm whales. The sperm whale will be our guide to the next level, because the sunlit zone is ending, the light is going out, and we're descending into the twilight zone. We follow the sperm whale past the 660-foot mark. The kingdom of the sun ends here. Welcome to the mesopelagic zone, the twilight zone. The water here turns deep blue, almost black. Look up, a faint fading glow. Look down, nothing but absolute darkness. This is the most mysterious layer of the ocean, and for a long time we didn't even understand its true scale. During World War II, military sonar operators on submarines began reporting something alarming. Sonar works like radar, but using sound instead of radio waves. During the day, instruments were showing the ocean floor at a depth of just 1,300 feet. Captains were panicked. Charts indicated thousands of feet of depth in those waters. Then at night, this false bottom mysteriously vanished and retreated back into the abyss. The military called it the phantom bottom. It took decades to understand what was happening. It wasn't the seafloor at all. The sonar was bouncing off billions of living creatures hanging in dense curtains in the twilight. The concentration of life here is so extraordinary it can fool acoustic instruments. This is home to one of the largest biomasses on Earth. But it is not paradise. It's a world of brutal constraints, cold, enormous pressure, and a lethal game of hide and seek. Some creatures evolved to see in near absolute darkness. Others evolved to become completely invisible. In the twilight zone, there is 1,000,000 times less light than at the surface. The human eye would be useless here. For us, it would be total darkness. For its inhabitants, it is a world of shadows and silhouettes. Eyes engineered by the abyss. The simplest way to capture more light is to make the lens larger. Meet the colossal squid. Don't confuse it with the giant squid. The colossal is heavier, more aggressive, and lives deeper. Its eyes are the largest in the history of animal life on Earth. Each one is the size of a basketball. Why such telescopes? Scientists determined that eyes this large are needed not only to spot prey, but primarily to detect light from movement. When a predator, say a sperm whale, approaches, it disturbs the bioluminescent plankton, which begins to glow. The colossal squid can detect this faint luminous cloud from 330 feet away and escape in time. The eye functions as an early warning radar system. Other fish took a different approach. Hatchetfish developed tubular eyes, permanently pointing upwards like binoculars locked on the ceiling. They cannot rotate. The fish sees only what's above it. It doesn't care about the sides. What matters is seeing the dark silhouette of food against the faint glow from above. But the most extraordinary creature in the twilight zone is the barrel-eye fish. Looking at it, it's difficult to accept that this thing could have arisen through natural evolution. The front of its head is a transparent dome filled with crystal-clear fluid. On its face, you see two small openings. These look like eyes. They're actually nostrils. The real eyes are inside the transparent head, two vivid green spheres. Why green? A specialized filter that cuts out glare and allows it to see clean silhouettes. In resting mode, these eyes point directly upward through the fish's own skull, scanning for prey above. But the moment the barrel eye spots something remarkable happens. The eyes rotate forward. The fish shifts from scanning mode to attack mode. No other animal on Earth has this mechanism. The laboratory of invisibility. In the twilight zone, where there are no rocks or corals, nowhere to hide, if you have density, you cast a shadow. If you cast a shadow, something eats you. So the twilight zone is the planet's premier laboratory of invisibility. Look at the glass shrimp Cystosoma, a crustacean of surprising size for its type, some individuals reaching the span of a human hand, but nearly impossible to see. No pigmentation, organs barely visible. Even its gut is oriented vertically to minimize the shadow it casts. But the core problem for transparent creatures in water is that they can glint like a piece of glass. Cystosoma solved this at the level of nanophysics. Its tissues have almost exactly the same refractive index as seawater. Light passes through with minimal distortion. And its shell is covered with a carpet of microscopic projections that function as an anti-reflective coating, canceling out any reflections. The creature doesn't hide in darkness, it merges with the water itself. We descend further, toward 2,300 feet, and life meets a new enemy, oxygen depletion. These are the oxygen minimum zones. The decomposition of organic matter here has consumed nearly all available oxygen, as little as 2 to 3% of normal levels. Most active fish would simply suffocate, but some creatures have made this dead zone their sanctuary. The symbol of this place is the vampire squid. Terrifying name, terrifying appearance, dark red cloak, webbing between its arms, electric blue eyes. But the appearance is all that's monstrous about it. In reality, it is one of the most passive and unhurried creatures in the ocean. In conditions of near-zero oxygen, it has shifted into extreme energy conservation. It has no muscles for bursting. Its body is gelatinous, in density almost equal to the surrounding water. It doesn't need to fight for buoyancy, it simply drifts. Its blood contains a unique pigment, hemocyanin, which extracts the last traces of oxygen from the water 5 times more efficiently than human blood. And it doesn't hunt, it's a scavenger. The vampire squid extends long, sticky filaments and collects marine snow, the slowly falling particles of dead flesh, feces, and detritus drifting down from above. It carefully scrapes the collected material off its filaments and eats. No pursuit, no struggle, just slow, quiet harvesting of the dead in the dark. Deep-sea gigantism. The shortage of food and oxygen here produces two strange effects. Some species shrink, becoming miniature, consuming fewer calories to survive. Others go in the opposite direction, into deep-sea gigantism. This is the paradox of the cold. Low temperatures slow metabolism, and sexual maturity arrives very late, so animals grow slowly but for an extraordinarily long time. Familiar creatures here become titans. Consider the giant isopod. On land, its relatives, pillbugs, are the size of a fingernail. Here, they grow to the size of a football. Armored tanks of the seafloor, capable of going years without food. Or siphonophores. At the surface, a jellyfish lives one season. Here, colonies of siphonophores grow for decades, stretching into living, bioluminescent ribbons up to 160 feet long. Time seems to pass differently in the twilight zone. Living light. But the defining feature of this world is living light. Here, in the darkness, approximately 80% of all animals produce light of their own. This is bioluminescence, a purely chemical process. A compound called luciferin reacts with oxygen, releasing energy as light. Crucially, it's cold light, almost no heat, which is critical for an environment where every calorie counts. The light is usually blue or green. These wavelengths travel furthest in water, and the eyes of Twilight Zone creatures are tuned precisely to this spectrum. But in this endless blue, some have learned to break the rules. Ocean water acts as a filter. It absorbs red light within the first few feet of depth, so the eyes of most deep-sea creatures have simply stopped perceiving the red spectrum. Red doesn't exist to them, it looks black. A rare group of predators has exploited this completely. The dragonfish, for example, has a specialized light-emitting organ beneath its eye that produces red light. More importantly, its eyes have retained the ability to detect that red light. This gives it an invisible advantage. The dragonfish illuminates a swarm of shrimp with its red headlamp, sees them perfectly, while the shrimp's eyes physically cannot register the wavelength. They don't see the light, they don't see the hunter, they don't even know they're lit up. The jellyfish Atolla, by contrast, uses light in an entirely different way. When detected by a predator, it triggers a powerful pulse of bioluminescence that sweeps in a circle around its bell, like the rotating light on a police cruiser. The jellyfish itself cannot fight back, so instead it launches a light show designed to attract something larger. Its signal says, "There's a meal here, come and get it." The attacking predator, realizing something bigger may now be incoming, typically panics and abandons the jellyfish. Atolla survives by turning predators against each other, not through reasoning, but through pure instinct. The Great Vertical Migration. The most spectacular event in the Twilight Zone doesn't happen one creature at a time, it happens collectively, every single night. The moment the sun drops below the horizon, the Great Vertical Migration begins. This is not simply fish moving in schools, it is the movement of billions of tons of biomass. Zooplankton, krill, jellyfish, fish, hatchetfish, squid. The entire living armada begins a synchronized ascent toward the surface. Why? Because that's where the food is. Phytoplankton at the surface has been accumulating the sun's energy all day. Every night, small animals rise to feed, while the daytime predators that hunt by sight are blind in the dark. With the first light of dawn, like light-sensitive vampires, they retreat back into the dark depths, 1,600 to 2,600 feet down. Hidden inside this migration is a mechanism that affects every one of us. Scientists call it the biological carbon pump. These creatures feed in the upper ocean, absorbing carbon that was originally captured from the atmosphere. Then they descend, transporting that carbon into the deep via waste and the death of their own bodies. Carbon packed into dense organic particles and animal tissue sinks to the sea floor. If these particles descend far enough, the carbon is effectively removed from the atmosphere for decades, sometimes centuries. These strange, bulging-eyed, slimy creatures are functioning as a planetary filter, physically pumping greenhouse gases from the atmosphere into the deep ocean. If this pump were to stop, atmospheric CO2 would rise far faster than it already does. The ocean would lose its capacity to buffer climate, and Earth's climate would become far less stable. We think we know a great deal about the twilight zone. In reality, it is one of the greatest blank spaces in all of biology. Conservative estimates suggest that 90% of the species living at this depth have never been described by science. That figure might seem suspicious. How can you know that 90% is unknown if you don't know the total count? The answer lies in genetics. Scientists use a method called environmental DNA. They draw a bucket of water from 1,600 feet down. That water contains an invisible broth of scales, mucus, and cells shed by everything that has ever passed through it. The DNA is extracted and run through a database of every known species on Earth. The results are consistently astonishing. The computer finds thousands of distinct genetic sequences, and roughly 90% of them return the result, no match found. We are holding the genetic passport of a living creature. We know it exists. We have no photograph, no name. We lower hydrophones and hear sounds, low-frequency hums, strange crackling, and have no idea what makes them. Down there, in the dark, right now, giants are swimming that no human eye has ever seen. The twilight zone is the last great frontier on our own planet. But we keep descending. Pressure becomes crushing. Temperature drops toward freezing. We leave the twilight zone behind. We cross the 3,300-foot mark. The last traces of sunlight vanish. Even the most sensitive photoreceptors can detect nothing. We enter the midnight zone. If this zone and the deeper layers below are combined, the majority of our ocean's entire volume is contained in this permanent, total darkness. Temperature here stabilizes at around 35 degrees Fahrenheit, just above freezing. Pressure at the top of this zone is around 100 atmospheres, 100 kilograms pressing on every square centimeter of your body. By the bottom of the zone, at nearly 13,000 feet, that figure multiplies fourfold. For a human being, this environment is instantly fatal. Any gas-filled cavity in the body, lungs, intestines, sinuses, would collapse in an instant. The pressure differential between the water outside and the air inside would kill in a fraction of a second. So how does life exist here at all? The answer: they gave up air. Rather than fight the pressure, they adapted to become part of it. The fish here have no swim bladders. Their bodies consist almost entirely of water and gelatinous tissue, and water, as physics tells us, is essentially incompressible. More than that, nature altered them at the molecular level. Their cells contain compounds called osmolytes that act as scaffolding, preventing proteins from deforming under crushing pressure. The pressure passes straight through them, meeting no resistance. They don't feel the weight of the ocean, the way we don't feel the weight of the atmosphere. But for the residents of the midnight zone, the real problem isn't pressure, it's hunger. Only about 5% of the organic material from the surface ever reaches depths of 6,500 to 10,000 feet. The chance of encountering prey is almost negligible, so the rule of survival here is stark. If you find food, you eat all of it, regardless of its size. The gulper eel. The ideal machine for this rule is the gulper eel, also called the pelican eel. A quarter of its body length is a massive hinged head. Its anatomy is built for a single supreme lunge. Its jawbones are mobile, and during an attack, they split open to an unnatural angle, creating a massive funnel. Its stomach has extreme elasticity. It can swallow prey larger and heavier than itself. In a world where the next meal may never come, you have no choice but to swallow whatever crosses your path. The anglerfish. But hunger is only half the problem. The other half is reproduction. How do you find a mate in absolute darkness, where population density is perhaps one animal per cubic mile? The solution deep-sea anglerfish evolved is considered by biologists one of the strangest in the animal kingdom. The creature with the glowing lure on its forehead, which you've almost certainly seen somewhere, is always a female. For a long time, scientists couldn't locate any males. They kept pulling up females with strange growths on their sides, which they assumed were skin parasites or tumors. Then they ran genetic analysis. The parasites were the males. Male anglerfish are tiny, weak creatures with exactly one purpose: to find a female by smell. When a male locates one, he bites into her side and never lets go. Over time, his lips fuse with her skin, his eyes disappear, his circulatory system merges with hers, becoming a living appendage. What remains of the male are reproductive glands available whenever the female is ready to breed. A single female can carry several of these dissolved husbands simultaneously. Love unto death, quite literally. The giant phantom jellyfish. Not everything here looks like a nightmare. The giant phantom jellyfish is one of the largest residents of the deep, and encountering one is extraordinary luck. Humans have observed it perhaps 100 times in recorded history. It has no stinging tentacles and doesn't produce light. It is the color of dark velvet, its bell more than 3 feet wide. Its most striking feature is what trails behind it: massive, soft oral arms, more like flowing ribbons than tentacles, stretching 10 feet or more into the darkness. It moves in slow, hypnotic pulses. Its hunting method is maximally simple. It doesn't sting its prey. It embraces it. The jellyfish simply enfolds whatever passes through its silken curtains in the folds of its body. The giant shark. In the midnight zone live creatures that have barely changed in 100 million years, living fossils. In perpetual cold and food scarcity, biological processes here shift into radical energy conservation. Metabolism slows, growth stretches across decades, which is why deep-water species can live for extraordinary lengths of time. The Greenland shark, which inhabits the upper reaches of this dark zone, is the most extreme example. It grows at the rate of about 1/3 of an inch per year. It can live more than 400 years. Some alive today were swimming when people still sail these waters in wooden frigates. It is one of the slowest vertebrates on Earth. Its speed rarely exceeds 1 mile per hour. Active pursuit of prey is rare. Its diet consists primarily of dead fish and the carcasses of whales and seals sinking to the bottom. Its body is dense and heavy, with short fins and weakly developed muscles, suited not for speed, but for maintaining stable position while conserving energy. Its vision is almost non-existent. Virtually every adult Greenland shark carries a parasite, a parasitic copepod, a small crustacean about 1 inch across, permanently attached to its cornea, slowly consuming it. The shark is nearly blind, but in permanent darkness, vision is secondary. Smell is what matters, and the shark can detect the chemical signature of organic matter from miles away. Its tissues are saturated with urea and trimethylamine oxide, a natural antifreeze that prevents it from freezing solid. These compounds make its flesh toxic. For most ocean predators, eating a Greenland shark would be a fatal meal. This chemical armor leaves adult Greenland sharks effectively without natural predators. Sexual maturity arrives, presumably, around the age of 150. To produce its first offspring, this shark must live for 1.5 centuries. The loss of any adult is an enormous, irreplaceable reproductive resource. The Dumbo octopus. In case you think the midnight zone contains nothing but nightmares, look a little lower. Here drifts a creature that looks like it escaped from a Disney film, Grimpoteuthis, or as scientists affectionately call it, the Dumbo octopus. It has none of the webbing of the vampire squid. Instead, it has 2 small fins on its head resembling the ears of the elephant Dumbo. It doesn't use jet propulsion like most octopuses, far too energy costly. Instead, it gently flaps its ears, gliding above the abyss. It is the deepest living octopus in the world, found at depths of nearly 23,000 feet. Down here, there is no day or night, no seasons. The environment has been essentially unchanged for millennia. At roughly 12,000 feet, we approach the lower boundary of the water column. The seafloor appears ahead. We enter the zone of abyssal plains. At first glance, an endless desert of silt, completely dependent on whatever drifts down from above. But here, in the darkness, rare oases exist, places where life breaks every known rule, points where organisms receive energy not from the distant sun, but from the molten core of our own planet. The abyssal plains are the largest plains on Earth, covering roughly half of the entire ocean floor. Visually, the most featureless place imaginable, endless miles of gray sediment, no currents to speak of, seemingly nothing alive. Look closely. The floor is covered with slow-moving animals, sea cucumbers, or holothurans. Down here, they are the dominant life form. In some deep ocean trenches, they constitute the overwhelming majority of all large animal biomass. Their work is simple and endless. They crawl across the bottom and vacuum up the surface layer of sediment like living hoovers, digesting centuries of accumulated organic matter and expelling the clean sediment behind them. They are the sanitation engineers of the abyss, constantly turning over the floor and preventing it from becoming dead stone. The whale fall. Occasionally, an event occurs that changes everything. A dead whale sinks to the bottom. In an ocean this vast, for any given point of seafloor, this is an extraordinarily rare event. A single carcass delivers more organic material than 100 to 200 years of slowly drifting marine snow. The moment it arrives, a crowd assembles. First come the large scavengers, deep-sea sharks and hagfish, drawn by smell across miles of ocean. They tear through thick skin and consume the flesh. Then smaller amphipod crustaceans and grenadier fish move in. The flesh disappears with shocking speed. A large whale can be stripped to bare skeleton within months. Then the strangest phase begins. Zombie worms, osedacs, colonize the bones. They have no mouth, no stomach. These organs are simply unnecessary. Inside the bone, they grow like the roots of a tree. Their symbiotic bacteria secrete acid that dissolves the bone tissue, reaching the lipid-rich marrow within. The worm feeds on what the bacteria produce. A single skeleton can sustain the seafloor community for decades. Hydrothermal vents, life without the sun. For a long time, it was assumed that all life on Earth ultimately depends on the sun. Even deep-sea animals are eating material that fell from above, material ultimately built from photosynthesis. In 1977, near the Galapagos Islands, scientists found something that changed that assumption permanently. Black smokers. They look like factory chimneys rising from the ocean floor. Hydrothermal vents, fractures in the Earth's crust through which superheated water erupts under pressure. The black color comes from dissolved metals and sulfur. Temperatures inside the plume can reach 750 degrees Fahrenheit. The water doesn't flash to steam only because the pressure is so extreme it holds it liquid. What stunned the scientists was not the vents themselves, it was what was living around them. This was the first ecosystem on Earth found to be entirely independent of sunlight. Instead of photosynthesis, it runs on chemosynthesis. Bacteria living here extract energy from the poisonous hydrogen sulfide pouring out of the vents and convert it into organic compounds. They make food out of chemistry and heat. The creatures that live here are unlike anything else on Earth. Take the giant tube worm, white tubes standing nearly 6 feet tall, topped with vivid crimson plumes. They have no mouth, no stomach. These organs are simply unnecessary. Inside the bone, they grow like the roots of a tree. Their symbiotic bacteria secrete acid that dissolves the bone tissue, reaching the lipid-rich marrow within. The worm feeds on what the bacteria produce. A single skeleton can sustain the seafloor community for decades. We leave the volcanic fields and descend into the great fractures of the Earth's crust. 36,000 feet, the Challenger Deep, the deepest point on the planet. Pressure here exceeds 1,000 atmospheres, more than 1 ton pressing on every square inch of surface area. Cold, silent, and absolutely dark. And yet there is life. The Mariana snailfish holds the record for the deepest fish ever found by science. It looks nothing like what you'd expect of a deep-sea monster. No scales, skin pink and nearly translucent. It appears fragile as wet tissue paper. But here is the paradox. This creature swims comfortably at a depth that would crush a military submarine. To send a human down here, we construct bathescapes from ultra-strength titanium with walls inches thick. This fish has no armor whatsoever. Its secret lies elsewhere. It contains no air. Its bones are flexible. It doesn't resist the pressure, it has become the pressure. Water passes straight through it, indifferent. It seemed that here, in the most inaccessible point on Earth, nature should have remained pristine. It has not. A few years ago, a research submersible reached the floor of the Mariana Trench at record depth and encountered an object. Not a new species of squid, not an ancient creature, a plastic bag. Our waste arrived at the bottom before we did. Humanity has always looked upward. We are obsessed with stars. We spend billions of dollars to observe galaxies whose light took billions of years to reach us. We know the map of Mars better than the topography of our own planet. But the most alien, most unexplored world in existence is not in space. It is here, just 7 miles below the surface. We search for extraterrestrial life on the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn, Europa, and Enceladus, imagining what it might look like. We don't need to imagine. We just need to point a light into our own bottomless ocean. Creatures that eat poison, organisms that survive under pressures measured in tons, animals that produce light to communicate in eternal darkness. They are living proof that life is possible under any conditions, even the most hellish imaginable. And it is entirely possible that here, in the boiling cauldrons of hydrothermal vents, billions of years ago, the first spark ignited that eventually allowed us to look at the stars and ask questions. The ocean is not simply water. It is our inner space, vast, extraordinary, and almost entirely untouched. We have directly seen less than 5% of this world, which means the greatest discoveries in human history are still ahead of us. Friends, our dive is complete. If this journey into the abyss was worth your time, support the video with a like. It helps us surface in recommendations and keeps new videos coming. Thank you for diving with us. See you on the surface.